My sister absolutely destroyed my wedding. I don't know why she thought it was a good idea to invite me to hers. 7 years of dating, and it was finally my special day. Everything was perfect until my sister showed up in a wedding dress even more expensive than mine. She rushed toward me in the middle of my speech. "Sorry, just need this for a second," she said, reaching for the microphone in my hand. I didn't let go. My grip tightened, and the room went quiet. She tugged harder, smiling like we were sharing a joke, so I released it because holding on would have made me look petty. She turned to the crowd and raised her glass. "I know this is my sister's day, but I just have to share something. I'm engaged." The room erupted in confused applause. A few guests looked at me, then back at her, unsure where to focus. My husband squeezed my hand under the table, but I couldn't move. I stood there in my wedding dress, watching her beam in the spotlight she'd stolen. She held up her left hand, showing off a ring I'd never seen, and laughed. I know, terrible timing, but I couldn't wait. You're all here, and I'm just so happy. The applause died fast. People shifted in their seats, glancing between us. My maid of honor started to stand, but my sister handed the mic back to me and returned to her table, grinning. I tried to finish my speech. My voice came out hollow, mechanical. I wrapped it up in 2 sentences and sat down, hands shaking in my lap. The rest of the night blurred into forced smiles and whispered conversations. My sister danced in the center of the floor, holding court while people congratulated her. Every time I looked over, she was laughing, glowing, performing. Then, around midnight, I found her sitting alone near the bar. Mascara streaked down her face, hands covering her eyes, shoulders shaking with sobs. One of my bridesmaids went to check on her, and I heard my sister's voice crack through the music. I just miss being loved. I miss it so much. My bridesmaid looked back at me, helpless. I walked over, still wearing my veil, and stood in front of her. She looked up with red, wet eyes like I was supposed to comfort her. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded and wiped her face with a cocktail napkin. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make tonight about me. Everything just hit me at once." I didn't answer. I stared at her and made a promise to myself right there. I would never stoop to her level. I would never hijack someone else's moment. I would be better. But I also promised that if she ever pulled me back into her chaos, I wouldn't just walk away. I'd make sure she felt exactly what she'd made me feel. I turned and walked back to my husband. The DJ played our last song. We danced while my sister cried into her champagne glass in the corner. A year later, her wedding invitation arrived. Gold foil, embossed lettering. A formal request for my presence at the most important day of her life. I held it and felt something bittersweet. Now it's my turn. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives who'd been at the wedding. Most of them danced around what happened, asking if I was okay or saying they hoped I enjoyed the day despite everything. A few were blunt. My aunt texted that my sister seemed unwell and maybe I should check on her. My husband's cousin asked if drama like that was normal in our family. My husband's mother called while we were packing for our honeymoon. She spoke carefully, like she was choosing every word. "I just want to make sure you're all right, sweetheart. That was quite a moment last night." "I'm fine," I said. "Good, I'm glad." She paused. "Does your sister do things like that often?" I told her no, that it was a one-time thing, stress and bad timing. She didn't sound convinced. After we hung up, my husband looked at me and said his mom had already mentioned it to his dad, and his dad had said something about red flags running in families. I didn't respond. I just kept folding clothes and pretending it didn't bother me. My sister's text came through around noon. No call, just a message that said she was sorry, that she'd had too much to drink and got emotional, and that she hoped I could forgive her. She added that she didn't mean to take attention away from me, and that she loved me. I read it 3 times and didn't reply. My best friend called that afternoon. She'd been one of my bridesmaids and had seen the whole thing unfold from the front row. "Are you going to say anything to her?" she asked. "What's the point?" I said. "She already apologized." "That wasn't an apology, that was damage control." I told her I didn't want to start a fight, that I just wanted to move on and enjoy my honeymoon. She went quiet for a moment, then said she understood, but that I shouldn't let it go completely. "People like my sister," she said, "don't stop unless someone makes them stop." I changed the subject. Over the next few days, more people reached out. Some were supportive, others were nosy, asking what my sister's deal was, or if there was bad blood between us. A cousin I barely spoke to sent a long message about how weddings bring out the worst in people, and how she'd seen similar things at other family events. She meant well, but it felt like she was explaining away what my sister had done instead of acknowledging how wrong it was. My mother called while we were at the airport. She said she'd talked to my sister and that my sister was devastated. She said my sister hadn't meant any harm and that I should try to be understanding because she was going through a rough time with her engagement. She announced her engagement at my wedding, I said. "That doesn't sound like someone going through a rough time." "She's confused," my mother said. "She doesn't know how to handle big emotions." I told her I had to board and hung up. On the plane, my husband asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said no. He nodded and put his hand on mine, and we sat in silence until takeoff. The honeymoon was supposed to be a reset, a chance to forget everything and focus on us. But every time I saw a wedding dress in a shop window or heard someone talking about their own wedding, I thought about my sister standing in front of my guests, glowing in her stolen moment. I thought about her crying at the bar, playing the victim while I smiled through photos and thanked people for coming. When we got back home, my sister had sent another text. This one was longer. She said she understood if I was still upset, but that she hoped we could move past it because family was important. She said she wanted me to be part of her wedding planning, and that it would mean a lot to her if I could be her maid of honor. I stared at the message for a long time. My husband read it over my shoulder and said I didn't owe her anything. He said I could ignore it or tell her no, whatever I wanted. I didn't reply to that one either. A few weeks later, my mother invited us to Sunday dinner. My sister was there, sitting at the table like nothing had happened. She smiled when I walked in and said she was glad I came. I sat down across from her and didn't say much. She talked about her wedding plans, showing everyone photos of venues and dresses, and my mother oohed and ahed like it was the most exciting thing in the world. At one point, my sister looked at me and asked if I had any advice for her big day. I said I didn't. She laughed and said she was sure I'd think of something. After dinner, I helped my mother with the dishes. She asked if I was still upset about the wedding, and I said I was fine. She told me I should let it go, that holding grudges only hurt me in the end. I dried the last plate and set it on the counter. I told her I wasn't holding a grudge. I was just done pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The months that followed turned into a steady drip of wedding updates. My sister sent photos of bridesmaid dresses, asked my opinion on centerpieces, and texted about how stressed she was with all the planning. I responded with short, neutral replies. My mother kept pushing me to be more involved, saying it would mean a lot to my sister if I showed more enthusiasm. She wants you to be part of this, my mother said during one of our weekly phone calls. You're her only sister. She didn't seem too concerned about that at my wedding, I said. My mother sighed. She apologized for that. How many times does she need to say sorry before you forgive her? I didn't answer. The truth was, I had forgiven her in the sense that I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't trust her. There was a difference, and my mother didn't seem to understand that. My sister started calling more often, usually when she wanted something. She asked if I could help her pick out invitations, if I knew a good florist, if I thought her fiancé's family would like the venue she'd chosen. I gave her short answers and changed the subject when I could. She never seemed to notice that I wasn't offering more than the bare minimum. One afternoon, she showed up at my house unannounced. I was working from home, and when I opened the door, she was standing there with a binder full of wedding planning materials. I was in the neighborhood, she said, smiling. Thought we could go over some details together. I let her in because turning her away would have caused more drama than it was worth. She spread everything out on my dining table and started talking about seating arrangements and menu options. I sat across from her and nodded at the right moments, but I wasn't really listening. At one point, she looked up and said, "You seem distant. Are you still upset about the engagement thing?" "I'm fine," I said. "You don't seem fine." She closed the binder and leaned forward. "I know I messed up, okay? But I need you to move on from it. This is supposed to be a happy time for me, and I don't want it overshadowed by something that happened a year ago." I stared at her. She'd framed it like I was the problem, like my inability to forget what she'd done was the real issue. She wasn't asking me to heal or to process what happened. She was asking me to pretend it never happened so she could feel better about herself. I said I'm fine, I repeated. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She packed up her binder and left a few minutes later, saying she had another appointment. After she was gone, I sat at the table and stared at the spot where her materials had been. My husband came into the room and asked if I was okay. "She doesn't get it," I said. "She thinks I'm being petty, but she doesn't understand what she did." "Then tell her," he said. I tried. "She doesn't want to hear it. She just wants me to move on so she doesn't have to feel guilty anymore." He didn't say anything else. He just put his hand on my shoulder and left me alone with my thoughts. The wedding invitations went out a few weeks later. Mine arrived in the mail on a Tuesday, thick and formal, with my name written in elegant script. I opened it and read through the details. The ceremony was at a church an hour away, followed by a reception at a country club. The whole thing screamed money and effort, and I wondered how much of it was genuine and how much was just for show. My mother called that evening to ask if I'd received my invitation. I told her I had. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said. "Your sister put so much thought into every detail." "It's nice," I said. "You are going, aren't you?" I hesitated. The question had been sitting in the back of my mind since the invitation arrived, and I still didn't have a clear answer. Part of me wanted to decline, to avoid the whole spectacle and save myself the trouble. But another part of me knew that skipping it would cause more problems than it would solve. My mother would be upset, my sister would play the victim, and I'd be painted as the bitter, jealous sibling who couldn't be happy for her sister. "I'll be there," I said. "Good. I'm so glad." My mother paused. "You know, it would really mean a lot to her if you gave a toast at the reception. Just something short and sweet." I laughed before I could stop myself. "You want me to give a toast?" "Why not? You're her sister." She hijacked my wedding speech to announce her engagement, and now you want me to stand up at her reception and say nice things about her? My mother went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. "That's not fair. She made a mistake and she apologized. You need to let it go." "I'm going to her wedding," I said. "That's enough." She didn't argue, but I could tell she wasn't happy. We ended the call shortly after, and I sat on the couch, staring at the invitation in my hands. My husband came in and asked what my mother had wanted. I told him about the toast request, and he shook his head. "That's ridiculous," he said. "You don't owe her that." "I know. So don't do it." "I won't." But the conversation stuck with me. The idea that I was expected to not only attend, but also perform, to stand up and validate my sister's happiness after what she'd done, felt like another layer of manipulation. She wanted me there to play the role of the supportive sister, to make her look good in front of her guests, and my mother was helping her push that narrative. I started thinking about her ex around that time. He'd dated my sister for 2 years before she broke things off. She'd told me at the time that he was too clingy, too emotional, and that she needed space. But after they broke up, she'd reach out to him whenever she was feeling lonely. She'd send him late-night texts asking how he was doing, telling him she missed him, keeping him on the hook just enough that he never fully moved on. I knew about the texts because she'd shown them to me once, laughing about how he still cared about her. She'd said it felt good to be wanted, even if she didn't want him back. I'd thought it was cruel then, but I hadn't said anything because I didn't want to start a fight. Now, sitting with the wedding invitation in my lap, I thought about him again. I thought about how easy it would be to reach out, to plant a seed, to let chaos do what it did best. I found her ex's contact information through an old group chat from when they were still together. His name was Reed, and according to his profile, he was still single. I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed anything. Once I sent the message, there would be no taking it back. I kept it simple. Told him I was worried about my sister, that she'd been talking about him a lot lately, that she seemed unsure about the wedding. He responded within an hour, asked if she was okay, if something had happened. I told him she'd mentioned regretting how things ended between them. I said she'd been texting me late at night, saying she wondered what would have happened if they'd stayed together. It wasn't entirely a lie. She had texted me about him before, though not in the way I was implying. Reed asked if she'd said anything specific. I told him she seemed scared to go through with the wedding, that she kept bringing him up when we talked. He went quiet for a while. Then he said he still cared about her, that he'd never really gotten over her. I told him the wedding was in a few weeks. I said if he wanted to talk to her, he should do it before it was too late. He said he didn't want to cause problems, that she was engaged, and he didn't have the right to interfere. I said it wasn't interference if she wanted to hear from him. I said she deserved to know he still cared before she made a decision she couldn't take back. That seemed to land. He asked me if I really thought it would help. I told him it might. I said she needed closure, or maybe something more, and that he was the only one who could give it to her. He thanked me for reaching out, said he'd think about it. I put my phone down and sat there, staring at the wall. My husband came home from work and found me on the couch, and he asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. A few days later, Reed messaged me again. He said he'd been thinking about what I told him and that he wanted to talk to my sister before the wedding. I told him that was probably a good idea. I said she'd been stressed and emotional, and hearing from him might help her figure out what she really wanted. He asked if I thought she'd be upset if he showed up. I said I didn't think so, that she'd probably be relieved. That wasn't true, but he didn't need to know that. He said he didn't have her new number, that she'd changed it after they broke up. I told him I'd pass along a message that I'd let her know he wanted to talk, but I didn't. Instead, I told him the wedding details, the church, the time, everything. He asked if I was sure that was the right move. I said it was the only move, that if he waited any longer, it would be too late. He said he'd be there. I put my phone down and realized my hands were shaking. Not from nerves, but from something else. Anticipation, maybe, or vindication. My husband asked me that night if I'd talked to my sister recently. I said no, that we'd been keeping our distance. That's probably for the best, he said. I agreed. The week before the wedding, my sister called. She was frantic, talking about last-minute details and vendor issues and how stressed she was. I listened without offering much input. At one point, she said, "I'm so glad you're coming. It means a lot to me." Of course, I said. I know things have been weird between us, but I want you to know I love you. You're my sister, and I want you there. I told her I loved her too. It wasn't a lie, exactly. I did love her. I just didn't like her very much. She asked if I was bringing my husband, and I said yes. She asked if I'd thought about the toast, and I said I hadn't. That's okay, she said. I just thought it would be nice. I told her I'd think about it, knowing I wouldn't. After we hung up, I checked my messages. Reed had sent another one, asking if I'd talked to my sister yet. I told him I had, that she seemed conflicted, and that he should definitely come to the wedding. He said he would. Said he owed it to himself and to her, to say what he needed to say. I told him that was brave. I told him she'd appreciate it, even if it was hard to hear. He thanked me again, and I put my phone away. My husband asked what I was smiling about. I told him it was nothing, just a funny text from a friend. He didn't question it. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my head, imagining how it would play out. Reed showing up, my sister's face when she saw him, the groom's reaction, the guests whispering and pulling out their phones. It was going to be chaos, and I was the one who'd set it in motion. My husband woke up in the middle of the night and found me staring at the ceiling. He asked if I was nervous about the wedding. A little, I said. It'll be fine, he said. You'll get through it, and then it'll be over. I nodded, but I wasn't nervous about getting through it. I was nervous about what would happen when Reed walked through those church doors. The morning of the wedding, I got dressed slowly, carefully. I picked out a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. My husband adjusted his tie in the mirror and asked if I was ready. Almost, I said. He waited by the door while I checked my phone one last time. Reed had sent a message an hour earlier saying he was on his way. I didn't respond. I just put my phone in my purse and followed my husband out to the car. The drive to the church was quiet. My husband tried to make small talk, but I wasn't in the mood. When we pulled into the parking lot, I saw my sister's car near the entrance. She was probably inside, getting ready, surrounded by bridesmaids and photographers, and people telling her how beautiful she looked. I wondered if she had any idea what was about to happen. My husband took my hand as we walked toward the church. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. And I was. For the first time in a year, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The church was already half full when we arrived. Guests filled the pews, dressed in pastels and suits, chatting quietly while soft music played from somewhere near the altar. My husband and I found seats near the middle, far enough back that we wouldn't draw attention but close enough to see everything. My mother spotted us and waved from the front row, mouthing something I couldn't make out. I nodded and smiled back. The groom stood near the altar with his groomsmen, laughing at something one of them had said. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who had no idea his world was about to tilt sideways. My sister's bridesmaids entered first, walking down the aisle in matching lavender dresses. They smiled at the guests, holding their bouquets carefully, and took their places at the front. Then the music changed. Everyone stood. My sister appeared at the back of the church, and even I had to admit she looked stunning. Her dress was white satin with lace sleeves, her hair pinned back in soft curls, her makeup flawless. She walked down the aisle on my father's arm, beaming at the guests, at the groom, at everyone who was watching her. This was her moment, and she knew it. When she reached the altar, my father kissed her cheek and sat down next to my mother. The officiant began speaking, welcoming everyone and talking about love and commitment. I glanced at my phone. No new messages from Reed. My husband leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. "Fine." The officiant asked everyone to be seated, and the ceremony began. My sister and the groom stood facing each other, holding hands, smiling like they were the only two people in the room. The officiant talked about marriage being a partnership, about trust and honesty and building a life together. My sister nodded along, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue one of the bridesmaids handed her. I kept checking my phone. Still nothing. Then, halfway through the officiant's speech about commitment, the church doors opened. Everyone turned. A few people gasped. Reed stood in the doorway, looking disheveled and out of breath, like he'd run all the way there. He was wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt, completely underdressed for a wedding. My sister's smile vanished. Her face went pale, and she took a step back from the groom. "Reed?" she said, her voice barely audible. The groom turned around, confusion spreading across his face. "Who's Reed?" Reed didn't answer. He started walking down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silent church. The officiant cleared his throat. "Excuse me, sir, but this is a private ceremony. I need to talk to her," Reed said, his voice loud and urgent. He didn't stop walking. My sister looked at the groom, then back at Reed, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed. Reed stopped a few feet from the altar. "I needed to see you. I needed to tell you something before you made a mistake." The groom stepped forward. "Who is this guy?" "He's my ex," my sister said quickly. "I don't know why he's here." "You know exactly why I'm here," Reed said. He looked at her with this desperate, pleading expression that made even me uncomfortable. "You've been texting trusting me. You told me you weren't sure about this. You said you still had feelings for me. The room went completely silent. Even the music had stopped. My sister shook her head. I never said that. I haven't talked to you in months. Yes, you did, Reed insisted. Your sister told me. She said you'd been reaching out, that you were confused, that you needed to see me before the wedding. My sister's head snapped toward me. Her eyes found mine in the crowd, wide and panicked. I kept my expression neutral, concerned even, like I had no idea what he was talking about. The groom looked between Reed and my sister. Is this true? Have you been texting him? No, my sister said, her voice rising. I haven't. I don't know what he's talking about. Your sister wouldn't lie about something like that, Reed said. She told me you still loved me. She said you were scared to go through with this. The groom turned to my sister. Did you ask your sister to contact him? No, my sister's voice cracked. I didn't, I swear. The groom looked at me. So did the officiant. So did half the church. I stood up slowly, making sure I looked shocked. I never said any of that. I don't know where he's getting this. Reed turned to me, his face twisting in confusion. Yes, you did. You messaged me. You told me she was having second thoughts. I think you're mistaken, I said calmly. I never contacted you. My sister was crying now, mascara starting to streak down her face. Reed, you need to leave. I don't know who told you to come here, but it wasn't me. I'm getting married. I love him, not you. Reed looked like he'd been slapped. But you said, I didn't say anything, my sister snapped. I haven't talked to you since we broke up. The groom crossed his arms. So why is he here? My sister didn't have an answer. She looked at Reed, then at me, then back at the groom, her mouth opening and closing. I don't know, she finally whispered. Reed pulled out his phone. I can show you the messages. Your sister sent them to me. He started scrolling, and my sister's face went from pale to red. What messages? Reed held up his phone, but before anyone could see what was on the screen, the groom grabbed it. He read for a moment, his jaw tightening. Then he looked at my sister. He's right. These are from her number. That's impossible, my sister said. I didn't send those. Then how did he get them? The groom demanded. My sister looked at me again, and this time there was something different in her eyes. Not confusion, suspicion. Did you do this? She asked quietly. I shook my head. Of course not. Why would I? Because you're still mad about the engagement thing, she said, her voice shaking. Because you've been holding it over my head for a year. The groom looked at me, then at my sister. What engagement thing? My sister ignored him. She took a step toward me, her hands clenched into fists. You did this. You set this up. You wanted to ruin my wedding the way you think I ruined yours. I stayed calm. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? She didn't. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, while the entire church stared at her. Reed looked between us, clearly realizing something had gone very wrong. I don't understand. Your sister said, my sister lied, my sister said flatly. She turned back to the groom. I didn't send those messages. I didn't reach out to him. Someone pretended to be me. The groom didn't look convinced. How do I know that? Because I'm telling you the truth, she said desperately. But the damage was already done. The guests were whispering, phones were coming out, and the groom's face had gone from confused to cold. The officiant held up his hands. Everyone, please, let's calm down. We can sort this out after. There's nothing to sort out, the groom said. His voice was flat, controlled. I want to know the truth. Did you contact him or not? My sister wiped at her face, smearing mascara across her cheek. I already told you. I didn't. Then explain the messages, the groom said. I can't, she said. Someone must have pretended to be me. The groom turned to Reed. You said her sister contacted you? Reed nodded. Yeah. She sent me messages saying my ex was having second thoughts, that she still loved me and wanted to see me before the wedding. Show me, the groom said. Reed handed over his phone again. The groom scrolled through, his jaw tightening with each swipe. My mother stood up from the front row. This is ridiculous. Why would anyone do something like that? My sister pointed at me. Because she's still angry about what happened at her wedding. She's been holding on to it for a year, and now she's trying to ruin mine. All eyes turned to me. My husband squeezed my hand, but I pulled away and stood. That's a serious accusation, I said calmly, and completely unfounded. Is it? My sister shot back. You've barely talked to me since my engagement. You've been cold and distant this whole time. And now, on my wedding day, my ex shows up claiming I've been texting him? You expect me to believe that's a coincidence? I expect you to have proof before you accuse me of sabotage, I said. The groom looked between us. Someone sent those messages. If it wasn't you, he said to my sister, then who was it? My sister didn't answer. She just stared at me with red, swollen eyes. Reed stepped forward. Wait, I think I still have the original messages on my phone. Maybe we can figure out where they came from. He started scrolling again, and my sister's maid of honor leaned over to look. These came from a number I don't recognize, Reed said. Not your sister's number. The groom grabbed the phone. Let me see. He looked at the screen, then at me. Do you recognize this number? I shook my head. No, it's a messaging app, the maid of honor said, squinting at the screen. You can send texts from any number you want. It's not traceable. My sister let out a bitter laugh. So someone went through the trouble of downloading an app, pretending to be me, and messaging my ex just to ruin my wedding? And you think that someone is my sister? It makes sense, the groom said quietly. My sister turned to him. You believe her over me? I don't know what to believe, he said. But Reed showed up here thinking you wanted him back. Someone told him that. And if it wasn't you, then who? I don't know, my sister shouted. But it wasn't me, and it wasn't her either. She wouldn't do something like that, wouldn't she? The groom said. You told me what happened at her wedding. How you announced your engagement during her speech. How she's barely spoken to you since. Maybe this is payback. My sister shook her head. She's not like that. She promised me she'd never stoop to my level. I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt exactly, but something close to it. I didn't do this, I said, and I resent the implication. My mother stepped into the aisle. Enough. This is getting out of hand. Can we please just take a break and figure this out calmly? There's nothing to figure out, the groom said. He looked at my sister. I can't marry you like this. Not when I don't know if I can trust you. My sister grabbed his arm. Please, don't do this. I'm telling you the truth. I didn't contact him. I didn't send those messages. Someone set this up to make me look bad. Then why does Reed have proof? The groom asked. Because someone faked it, my sister said, her voice breaking. Someone wanted this to happen. Someone wanted you to doubt me. The groom pulled his arm away. I need time to think. No, my sister said. We can work this this out. We can— I said I need time, the groom repeated. He turned and walked down the aisle, his groomsmen following behind him. The church went silent. My sister stood at the altar, her bouquet hanging limply in her hand. Mascara streaked across her face. Then she turned to me. You did this, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. I don't know how, but I know you did. I didn't, I said. Yes, you did. She started walking toward me, her dress dragging on the floor behind her. You've been waiting for this. You've been planning it ever since my engagement, and now you got what you wanted. I stayed where I was. I have no idea what you're talking about. She stopped a few feet away. You're lying. I can see it on your face. You're upset, I said. You're looking for someone to blame. I'm blaming the person who did this, she said. And that's you. My mother stepped between us. Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping. My sister ignored her. Tell me the truth. Did you contact Reed? Did you tell him I wanted to see him? No, I said. Liar, she hissed. My husband stood and put his hand on my shoulder. That's enough. You're making accusations you can't prove. I don't need proof, my sister said. I know my sister, and I know what she's capable of. One of the bridesmaids came over and tried to guide my sister back to the altar, but she pulled away. Get off me, she snapped. The bridesmaid backed off, and my sister turned to the remaining guests. Everyone can leave, she said. The wedding's over. A few people started to stand, whispering to each other. My mother tried to say something, but my sister cut her off. I said leave. The guests filed out slowly, some glancing back at my sister, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Reed stood awkwardly near the altar, clearly unsure whether to stay or go. My sister pointed at him. You too, get out. Reed opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it and left. Within minutes, the church was nearly empty. Just me, my husband, my parents, and my sister. My father walked over to my sister and tried to put his arm around her, but she shrugged him off. Don't, she said, just don't. He stepped back, looking helpless. My mother turned to me. Did you do this? No, I said. Then why is she so convinced you did? Because she needs someone to blame, I said. And I'm the easiest target. My sister laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're unbelievable. You're standing here lying to everyone's face and you don't even care. I'm not lying, I said. Yes, you are. She took a step closer. You wanted this. You wanted me to feel what you felt. You wanted me to stand up here and watch my day fall apart the same way yours did. I didn't answer, because she was right. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked toward the back of the church. When she reached the doors, she stopped and looked back. I hope it was worth it, she said. Then she was gone. My mother looked at me with disappointment in her eyes. I don't know if you did this or not, but either way, you need to fix it. There's nothing to fix, I said. She accused me without proof. That's on her, not me. My mother shook her head and followed my father out of the church. My husband and I stood there alone. The flowers were still on the altar, the chairs still lined up in perfect rows, but the space felt empty now. Let's go, he said quietly. I nodded. As we walked out, I glanced back one last time. The church looked exactly like it had an hour ago, but everything had changed. The reception was canceled before anyone even got to the venue. My sister sent a group message to all the guests saying the wedding was off and that they should go home. My mother called me that night. She didn't yell, but her voice was tight. Your sister is devastated. The groom won't answer her calls. Half the family thinks you're responsible. I'm not, I said. Then who is? She asked. I didn't answer. My sister showed up at my house 2 days later. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes red and swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I know you did it, she said. And one day I'll prove it. She turned and walked back to her car without waiting for a response. I closed the door and leaned against it. My husband asked if I was okay. I'm fine, I said. And I was, because my sister had finally felt what I felt a year ago, standing in front of everyone, watching her moment collapse while people whispered and stared. I didn't ruin her wedding. I just gave chaos a microphone and let it speak for itself.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.